guys, Ahmed here, back with another video. Here today to give you my review of this new Tjay project, 222. Before I get into the review, please everybody subscribe. Please comment what y'all thought of this album. I'm really curious because there's a lot of different interpretations I could see of this project, and I'm very curious to see what the different interpretations of this album were. I really liked it, but please make sure to subscribe, and make sure to comment what you thought of the album. So, this is the sophomore project from rapper, singer, and songwriter Lil Tjay. And Lil Tjay, before this album, was in an interesting place in his career. He came out with a mixtape in 2019 that showed a lot of promise, showed a lot of talent, and showed a lot of ability. However, his debut album, Destined to Win, didn't quite hit the impact that anyone was really expecting. It was very bloated with songs that I felt like just didn't have much focus and weren't truly emblematic of what made Tjay so great in the first place. And this rollout for 222 was pretty insane looking back at it. The way that he hyped up this album, putting up a screenshot of the category that he put these songs into. The two songs he used as leading singles being some of the best that I've ever heard from Tjay in my life. Him on multiple occasions saying and talking up how good this album is and talking about how this album would represent maturity and growth from him. So I was very curious to see what would happen. First, let's get into the writing. And this was the category that I was genuinely the most secure about. I feel like ever since Kendrick Lamar dropped Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, there's been a handful of artists who've taken on the task of dropping more albums with more serious tones, more conscious themes, and more introspection in their raps. However, one of the newer problems that I didn't even think was possible last year, but recently have been very much introduced to, is that you need to have a certain pen game to pull off the introspection, to pull off the conscious rap. And some people do, some people kind of do, and some people don't. And given the place I felt like Tjay's pen was in prior to this, I was a bit concerned on whether or not he would be able to fully pull off the more mature, more adult album that he was going for. But I'm actually happy to say that he did. He did a really good job with this project. He found his own way to be compelling and interesting. And I went back and forth on the writing for a while, listening to songs over and over again. But after giving it a really solid listen and appreciating what he had to offer lyrically on each song, I have to give the writing an amazing. From the lyrical focus on each song to the deep themes and messaging, to the very deep and honest emotional lines on each song, it seemed very like from the heart from Tjay, and that was very powerful to me. Pretty much all of the songs were deep in their own way when you really think about it, whether it be the deeper song, like the pain songs, him getting into not just the individual people that he lost, but the greater context to which his environment is in, to the love songs where he really gets into a bag about what he's talking about, to the point where it almost feels like a narrative story about a certain part of a relationship. Of course, the way these songs are sequenced is also really great, with him coming to a more prosperous and I would say happier conclusion towards the end of the record, which is always nice. And even the motivational songs, y'all know how much I love the motivational music. I talked about it when I was listening to Fabio Foreign, and it really, it takes that started from the bottom aesthetic, but really delves into it deeply, and he really goes into his own personal struggles and why he personally feels like he needs to succeed beyond just the generic, started from the bottom pop song that some rappers Drake will make. One other thing I wanted to say about the love songs is that I was actually pretty surprised because normally I feel like hood stuff and love songs don't always go together, and I feel like when people try to force that blend, it doesn't really work. But I actually really like the way that TJ did it on this album because there's one song where with Jadakiss where he sort of talks about how what it's like, or no, I think it's Someone Who Cares, where he really talks about like what it's going to take to be with somebody like him, the insecurities, the lifestyle, and the pain that he's had to deal with, and the trauma that he's had to deal with makes it more difficult for him to be in a relationship. And while this is specific to his experience of growing up in the hood, it is very relatable to a lot of people who have gone through trauma that makes it harder for them to live healthy and happy relationships. Another thing that I really like is I think the song with the Kid Leroy, he's got a lot of bars about how his anxiety seems to be like off in a way. Like he talks about how on one hand it's like he's more nervous to like he's more nervous to get broken up with than he is to catch a body, which is obviously insane imagery, but I think a lot of us can at the very least relate to feeling like, taking like a super hard test or, going into a job interview is comparable or even less nerve-wracking than going and telling your crush how you might feel. And so for him to tap into those experiences and use his sort of street acumen to get that across is actually really, really, really interesting. And of course, there are the really amazing storytelling tracks on here. But if I'm going to be honest, these are probably, from a writing standpoint, I think the weakest moments. Not because they themselves are weak. I actually think that Foster Baby is one of the best songs that TJ's ever written. But I think that, like, if we compare like the totem pole, right? If you compare, say, Too Grown to most other love rap tracks, it's at the upper echelon in my opinion. But if you compare like January 22nd to any of the upper echelon of storytelling, in my opinion, it doesn't really compare. Like compare it to like For Your Eyes Only or Sing About Me, I'm Dying of Thirst. In my opinion, it's not quite, or even like Crazy Story. I don't think that the storytelling is like as compelling, but it is a story within itself, which makes it somewhat impressive. So yeah, that would be the writing, definitely amazing. The production, I'm going to give a great. You can tell the effort that TJ put into this album, and I can tell that he himself wants this to be a classic album with very anthemic and synth lead endings. A lot of very powerful instrumentation with the guitar and things of that nature. And especially with those love songs, having those acoustic ballads really makes for a more emotional, more powerful messages getting across. That being said, a lot of the production underneath that still feels very dime a dozen, still feels like this very cheap, this like cheap, deep production that we've kind of been inundated with from artists like Polo G and Lil Durk, and I'm not like that big of a fan of it. I really wish people would like go for more natural production like overall, and I know it's not what would like be popular, but in my opinion, I just think that like the current production we're getting on like the deep songs nowadays, again, I would cite Polo G, I would cite Lil Durk as like prime examples. When you listen to the beats of their deep songs, it's just not as interesting as I think it could have been, in my opinion. That being said, like I said, still really strong production. Just I wish it was more unique. Features, I'm gonna give this a perfect, man. I actually have to give this a perfect, and this is one of the craziest things to me, honestly, is that like, again, everyone is placed perfectly and everyone performs perfectly, and I think that's what's so incredible. You look at a song like Blah Blah Blah, Fabio goes off, and rather than sort of getting into like just random drill bars, he really gets into his own storytelling bag about he really gets into his own storytelling bag about some of the experiences he's been through and and how he used to behave in the street life. I really wish, I don't know if he said names on this track or it was posture or if it was both. I really do wish he would stop like name dropping people because I just never like that. In my opinion, I think it's always corny, whether it be Bronx people or drill or Brooklyn, whatever. But I thought that the contribution was great and didn't overstay its welcome. Jadakiss, man, he low key like it was on a love song. It was like, oh, it's not gonna go that well. But like his contribution, he I think merged the whole love and street aesthetics low key better than even Tjay did on his song, and that was really really incredible to see. And on a lot of the love tracks, I'm gonna get into this in the flows and vocals, but I don't think that like some of the vocal passages I think were some of the weakest on this album. But it's interesting because it's almost like Tjay kind of knew that, and so for the love songs at least, he kind of took a step back, a la Yachty, on his last record, and rather than trying to insert his own sort of subpar vocals, he took a step back to the production. He took a step back to the features and allowed the entire tapestry of the song to really like grip and hold the listener in. You hear that on songs like Too Grown and Stressed, where Summer Walker and the Kid Leroy are really able to take over with I think their stronger vocals and really make for some incredible R&B cuts. Yeah, Coco Jones was amazing on the song. I think it was Greater, and with the gospel instrumentation, very powerful. Almost reminded me of War Baby a little bit with the way that it ends the record on this gospel note. It was also really cool to see the return of TJ and Polo G on Beat the Odds. I thought they traded bars super, super well on that track. And I think that the pain that Polo G has in his voice whenever he's sort of crooning is incredible and worked with the song. As well as it was great to see Fabio and TJ really return to form after, in my opinion, was a decent span of lowlights in their sort of group discography. And yeah, man, overall the features were perfect because I feel like it wasn't just things to make TJ look better. It was exactly what TJ needed in every single moment that he needed a feature. But there are also not features on songs that did not need a feature, like January 22nd or Foster Baby, for example, didn't have any features, and I thought that was really important as well. But yeah, I especially like the way that he was able to take a step back on the more R&B cuts and more pop tracks, and really let the stronger vocalists go in and really sort of turn those tracks into something truly transcendent. The next one, and this is what I kind of talked about a little bit earlier, was flows and vocals. I'm gonna give this a great. I really enjoyed the pockets that he was in for the most part. No. I really enjoyed the pent pockets like throughout the whole song, especially if you listen to Blah Blah Blah, Night Shift. I really enjoyed the sort of faster flows he was kicking. Even the slower flows were pretty good. And for the most part, I did enjoy his vocals. There was a bit of a rasp to them, and I think for the most part it worked on songs like Nobody and Night Shift. But I think on the love songs, it didn't really hit as hard, and that's kind of where you get the only miss, in my opinion, which is Somebody Who Cares, which has a really deep message and verse, but the chorus really just doesn't hit for me because of how raspy his vocals are, in my opinion. Um, and so, yeah, for that, I'm going to bump it down to great, but it was still very, very, very good. And again, while it was probably the worst part of the record, it definitely still, he was able to use people like Summer Walker and the Kid Leroy to sort of balance that out. So yeah, definitely a grade on the vocals and flows. Musical execution, I'm gonna also give this a grade. The only reason I don't really give it an amazing is because basically all of the things music related I gave a grade to, and it kind of makes it kind of doesn't allow me to fully musically tap into the album, but I did want to say that this is one of the most cohesive albums to come out this year, while also being one of the most lyrically focused albums this year. I really enjoyed how basically it even though every song is about something different, it doesn't sort of feel like it's all over the place. But there's no song that you can take out, which I think is really important and really, really powerful. But with the musical execution, I think that the production being a bit dime a dozen, as well as the awkward vocal passages, really kind of hinder the record in a lot of ways, just from a musical standpoint. And I think that for that reason, there's not as many of the songs that are just easily bumpable. And so, yeah, I would say that, but definitely it gets points for being cohesive, yet still each song feels very different instrumentally. And I definitely think that this is probably musically TJ's strongest project. Let's say strongest album. And yeah, and overall, it's weird. So I was debating back and forth on whether to give this an overall great or amazing, but I think I'm going to give this an amazing. I know that, per the rules, there's more greats than amazings and blah, 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 blah. But I think for me, it's like, what are we really focusing on with this album? This album is about the growth and maturity of Lil TJ. And that gets across fully in this project. Very, very well through this project. You can tell, even like his love songs, the way that he's able to take accountability. Like he put a lot of, he felt like he had some growing up to do. And he musically accomplished that on this album. So I think that the writing is the most standout portion to me. And I also think that that's the best part to me. And I'm very happy that he was actually fully able to execute this sort of album. And I'm really, really happy with what we got this year. This definitely, in my opinion, raises TJ's stock. And don't be surprised if he ends up in the top 10 this year. I don't know. I don't know. He might. You know what I'm saying? But I really, really enjoyed this project. And I'm so glad that TJ was able to pull it all together and really give us some truly powerful music coming out of the mainstream of New York. I hope this sells well. I hope this does well.